Well, good morning and welcome to church, Hebron, DeMont, Wheatfield, Jasper County Jail, and online. It is really good to be with you guys today. And we had another crazy week, and I can't believe how perfect God's timing is to be talking about our Canceling Jesus series. It's about Jesus and cancel culture, and I think in light of our national and international and local events, I mean, this is the time to talk about this. Jesus, he brought about this teaching. It was so radical, it was so transformational that it brought an end to cancel culture for those who practice it in the world of antiquity. He says in Matthew 5 and verse 43, "You've heard the law that says love your neighbor and hate your enemy. And that is the way of the world, isn't it? You love those you hate those who are different, whatever." He says, "But I say love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. In that way, you will be acting as true children of your Father in heaven." And this teaching would change the world. It would bring an end to war as irregular and not the norm. The reason we're horrified at the death and destruction that's being wrought in Ukraine, on maternity wards, on hospitals, on all these places, is because of the teachings of Jesus. I mean, that would be regular. That was regular for most of the human endeavor, but because of this teaching right here, the world was transformed. And even if you're not a Christian, as a matter of historical fact, you have Jesus to thank for the relatively incredibly rich, peaceful, healthy life that we now enjoy. We started this series by laying out the history. And then we talked about how to actually love your enemies through humility and confession and receiving forgiveness. Last week we talked about how to change the minds of our enemies, how to persuade people who think differently through relationship. This week I want to talk about something entirely different. This is, I think, the best message of the series. It is, for me, my wife keeps saying, "John, I really hope you listen to the message that you're preaching this week," okay? Because it's like really important. I'm going to listen to it like 4 times. I promise, I will. But she's like, "For real, you need to do this." So it's a good message. I can't wait. This week I want to talk about something really important, and I want to start with a story. My kids are just so wonderful to me. I haven't always enjoyed being a dad, but right now I'm just loving it so much. It is so much fun. And the thing I love about my kids is their ability to enjoy anything. You know, we were up in Hebron doing this dinosaur search with the library, and they would use a crosswalk, and it just blew their minds. Like, they push the button, and they'd see the thing. They'd be like, "Best day ever. I'm so nervous," to cross the street. It's like amazing. They enjoy these little, simple things, and every day in general, they love life so much. My oldest daughter, for years, has really loved our wedding photo album. And it's been her comfort item. Years ago, she used to go to sleep with it on her chest. Like, this is her. She'd hold the wedding album, and every night she'd be like, "Can you read me the story?" And it's like, there's no words, but yeah, we'll tell you the story about how Mom and Daddy got married, whatever. And for years, she's been asking for a camera. I want a camera, And it's like, why do you want a camera? I didn't understand. Finally, a friend of ours gave her this like digital point-and-shoot camera that, one of those cameras that the girls used to carry to the clubs with their clutch and their camera. They carry both of them at the same time. Remember that? Like, you carry it with you as your most prized possession. Now nobody has these anymore. But it was a thing, right? And she gave it to Isabel, this very worn, very used, very nice camera. And Isabel took her siblings out, and she dressed them up because she wanted to recreate this, right? And so she took these pictures of her younger 2 siblings. First picture she's taken, isn't that cute? Like, she did these pictures. She wanted to, recreate the deal. And I just think it's so adorable. I'm like, that's pretty good for a 10-year-old who's never used a camera, to get them out there, to pose them, whatever, and to get a 4- and a 6-year-old brother and sister, no less. And they just had the best day. It was a Saturday, a long, lazy Saturday, where we cleaned the house together and folded laundry together, and they mopped and whatever, and they took pictures, and they did homework. At the end of the day, it was like, "Daddy, it was just the best day ever." "What was your high?" "All of it, Daddy." "What was your low?" "No low. It's just the best day." And if you look at a picture of the pie chart of their minds, it's like 80% best day ever. 10% it's all right. 10% it's the end of my life. I want to die. I hate everything. My world is falling to pieces. And I would say that's pretty typical of kids, right? I mean, this is pretty happy. Like, that's the joy chart of their minds. It's pretty darn good. Now, unfortunately, things kind of change as you get older, don't they? I mean, I remember growing up on the lake in Minnesota. We had this wonderful neighbor named Rose Anderson. She was a widow. She was 80-something, retired elementary school teacher. When I was coming out of hospitals, I had missed months of school, and she kind of helped me stay caught up. I mean, the reason why I didn't get held back was because of Rose Anderson, And she got too old for her house. She had to sell it. And when she put it up for sale, his family came. They told her this big sob story of having cancer. And, Mom just wants a few good summers with her kids before she dies on the lake. Complete lie. They lied. They fabricated a story to get a deal on this house. It's like, that's so terrible, right? So Rose gave them a deal. They remodeled it, and ultimately they flipped it for a huge profit. It's like, what terrible people to soak this poor old widow on the lake. Come on, right? So they buy this house, and they just were not nice. They were not nice, right? So we had this deck down by the lake right next to, we shared a property line. The houses were really close by the lake, And with this deck down by the lake. And our new neighbor, his name was John. He, great name, not nice guy. But anyway, he goes down there and he pulls the permit records and finds out that this deck that the previous owner had built by our house that we bought, from this owner years ago, he says, he never pulled a permit for this deck. I'm going to sue you or you need to tear out that deck. I was like, golly, so he's going to city hall meetings, trying to get us to tear down this deck. And honestly, for my parents, not a good situation. New neighbor rips off 80-year-old dear friend. And now he's doing all this stuff, son's in and out of the hospital bills, whatever else. And the deck became just the center point of our lives. You know what I mean? Like, this deck is all we talked about. This guy doing this thing. I remember my dad telling everybody about the deck saga. This guy, can you believe it? He was going to town meetings. And, the deck was a legit prayer request at our church. We would be, Rick, how's it going with the deck? I've been praying for your deck, at life group, praying for the deck. And this silly deck, we hardly ever used it. It's 150 feet down to the lake, and you carry your tray down to the deck. Well, as soon as the deck is under threat, we're using the deck all the time. This is the best deck we've ever had. This deck is our life, we had a built-in screen porch on our house that you could eat at that was easy, but now that the deck might go away, we're carrying stuff down there, we're using it. This deck is amazing. What's crazy is we had this great life. We really did. We lived in the best country in human history, the best, most peaceful time in human history. Everybody was prospering. We lived on this beautiful 2,400-acre pristine Minnesota lake. I went to the best public school in the state of Minnesota, Matamidi schools. You can look it up. They were amazing. But our life felt terrible. Have you ever had an event like that? And it's crazy how something that is such a small portion of our life, the deck wasn't that big a deal. If we got rid of the deck, it's fine. We'd have grass. You know what I mean? You can eat on grass. You just mow it, you eat on it, you put some lawn chairs down. Who needs a deck, But it dominated our life. And what it did was it took a life that really, this should have been 10% negative, 80% positive, and it flipped it. And I don't know if you ever had a life like that where you have a 10% event feel like 80% of your life. Instead of being happy, we're just angry, we're sad, we're upset, we reach this place, whatever. My parents are godly people, but this stuff, it just sucks you in, doesn't it? Sometimes you get these events, these things in life, and you begin to think up scenarios, you know what I mean? John had a kid named Maya, and she was at the bus stop, and I'm sitting there eyeing Maya. She's eyeing me. It's we hate each other, and you're thinking, maybe I could say this, and then she'd say that, but then I'd say this, and booyah. You know what I mean? You're writing scripts in your mind. You reach this place where you go to bed thinking about it. You dream about it at night, this thing, this issue, this deal. You wake up, you're still thinking about it. You check your phone for texts, you do whatever, just dominates. Today I want to talk about cancel culture. And I want to talk about how cancel culture insidiously ruins our joy chart. Because so many of us, we have these awesome lives, and we're mad. And the question I want to answer today is, how do I control how I feel about my enemies and my life and my mind? Because even after we're forgiven by God, it's hard to control our minds, isn't it? It just runs amok. And what we're going to do today is pretty simple. We're going to look at the Bible, and we're going to make some points. Because I already told a story. And a lot of you guys, you know my formula. I know what Pastor John does. Is tell a story, look at the Bible, make some points. Okay? Well, you got to tell us this. Look, some of you guys are new. You don't know. This is what I do. It's my thing. Okay? It's how you write a message. But anyway, if you struggle with keeping it positive, even though you have a good life, and you want to get control of it, you're going to love this message. I love this message. This is a message I need. It's my favorite one in the series, favorite message I preached in a long time. You want to lean into it. But the Bible is replete with examples of people who have good lives who can't see it. My favorite story in the Bible about this, though, is from the book of Esther. And the book of Esther, to me, it's not about Esther. It's not about her uncle Mordecai. It's about this dude named Haman. He is the one that I relate to in the story. Haman in the book of Esther. Really relatable guy. Esther chapter 3, verse 1, it says, sometime later, King Xerxes promoted Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, over all the nobles. Haman promoted over all the nobles. That's what you got to get. Making him the most powerful official in the empire. All right. This guy, he's up there. He's promoted. It says, all the king's officials would bow down before Haman to show him respect whenever he passed by. For so the king had commanded. But Morty is what we're going to call him. Refused to bow down or show him respect. So Haman has it made. You know what I mean? He's the most powerful man in the empire. He has got, palaces on the shores of Lake Como. You know, I'm talking these accordion glass doors, infinity edge pools overlooking these beautiful vistas, you know, these ancient views. I mean, it's amazing. He's got a G6 private jet. He's got a mega yacht. He's got a helicopter. He's got a Bugatti Chiron. He's got all this stuff. He's loaded. He's the most powerful man in the empire. Everywhere he goes, people bow down to him, you know. Now, what do you suppose this joy pie chart should look like in light of this right here? I would think 99% good, right? I mean, this is his life. It should be awesome. It's like, dude, my life, I'm killing it. Life is pretty darn good. Morty is the equivalent. This dude not bowing down to him, to me, is the equivalent of a mosquito biting you as you're cashing in $1 billion lottery ticket. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah. This should be about it, you know? I mean, you're the most powerful man. It's the world of antiquity. Just kill Morty. That's what I'm talking about. You know, got him. That should be his life. But that's not his reaction. In verse 5, it says, when Haman saw that Morty would not bow down or show him respect, he was filled with rage. You got people like that in your life? This one little thing, and they can't see anything else. They're zeroed in on this deal, and it's a thing. On a scale of 1 to 10, it should be a 0, but for him, it's a 10. Isn't this just typical? How many of us are like Morty in our minds? We just go nuts. We're just filled with rage. We live in this awesome, awesome world, and we do this all the time. We're just like, hey, man, you know, it's all we have this little thing. Our life is like 80, 90% good, but we focus on the 10%. We blow it up into a 90%. You know, it's just so unfair. My life is just so unfair. You know, my husband, he's so mean. He's so rude because he doesn't communicate. You know, he's just mean. You know, my wife, no matter what I do, I could never make her happy. You know, I just can't make her happy. You know, crumbs on the counter. You know, it's whatever. Like, I did everything else, but crumbs on the counter. You know, it's always, and we just spiral in our minds. You know what I mean? You ever done that? You just spiral up, you know, and something that should be a 1% thing turns into a 99% thing. We have good lives, but we feel terrible, especially in this country. You know, here's what blows my mind. You know, with food literally falling out of our mouths, like, you know, your pizza pockets in your mouth, like, blah, blah. As you work on your third project car in your outbuilding with drained floors and heated floors and whatever. You walk back into your heated, air-conditioned home with hot and cold running water. You got a room inside of a room to hold your fine clothes, sometimes double-decker room. And you're raging about the country, the president, the whatever. That's us. We're just like Haman. You know, the poorest of us, better off than Haman was in his day. Haman would give anything to live in a trailer today. The life that we have, healthier, more comfortable. You know, I'm like Haman. It's almost laughable to listen to this guy, though. He's got a good life. We're not all like Haman in this part. He goes a little nuts. But in verse 6, it says, he learned of Morty's nationality, so he decided it was not enough to lay hands on Morty alone. Instead, he looked for a way to destroy all the Jews throughout the entire empire of Xerxes. So now he wants to commit genocide. This guy is like Ilhan Omar. He's like Whoopi Goldberg. You know, he hates the Jews. He's like, I'm going nuts. And it's like this one dude doesn't bow down to you in public. So let's just commit genocide. It's like, okay, so that's a little irrational. I don't know if you ever have a spouse who like, here's this little thing and then here's their reaction. It's like, maybe you need to stop crying for a second. Like maybe you just need to get control of your emotions, you know, instead of murdering millions of men, women, and children. What Haman does is he goes nuts and he cashes in all of his influence, all of his wealth to hash out this evil plan. He goes to the king. He says, you know, if it please the king, issue a decree that the Jews be destroyed. And I'll give 10,000 large sacks of silver to the government administrators to be deposited in the royal treasury because this one dude didn't bow down. He's going to commit genocide. He's got that on his conscience. And he's going to spend 10,000 large sacks of silver. How much money is that? I'll tell you what. It's all of his money. This is his life savings. And how many people you know this? You know this dude, he builds this big, huge empire and he gets sued. He's like, I am going to fight this. I'm not settling. It's not right. I'm spending $5 million. Everything. If we have to, I'm going to take it and I'm going to crush them and I'm going to put them out of business. It's like, well, okay. You know what I mean? Like maybe just calm down. You got a good life. No, I don't. I don't have a good life because it's like, wow. How many of us are like him though? This happens all the time, doesn't it? Becomes his life's work. Now, lots happens in this story. But eventually, Haman's big plan is about to come to fruition. He's doing well in life. Everything's unfolding the way that he wanted it. It's been months since all this started. Skip down to chapter 5 and verse 9. It says, Haman was a happy man as he leaves this banquet. Okay, he's leaving the king's palace. There's just a big party. There's music playing. he can hear it. He's coming out. He tells the valet to pick up his Bugatti Chiron. He's got this supermodel wife named Zeresh. She's got some crazy designer dress on, She's got, Louis Vuitton shoes on or whatever the Red Soul ones are. And he gets there, and he is just totally, but he's the empire's king or whatever, right next to the king. So he swerves to the car like Wolf of Wall Street, opens the door for his wife, gets in there, and he drives his Bugatti. But before he's leaving, it says, but when he saw Morty sitting at the palace gate, not standing up or trembling nervously before him, Haman became furious. It's like this dude is tripping over nothing. He just left a party. Stuff is good. His evil plan's in place. His joy pie chart should be 99% joy, but it's flipped. It's 99% anger. And he goes home to his mansion, shores of Lake Como, overlooking this beautiful ancient lake. He's got all his friends there at the after party, and he goes on a soliloquy. You ever have a great man, successful man, do this? Like what they do is they talk about all they've accomplished, I'm so rich, and I did all this stuff, and I built all these things, and I'm just the best, and whatever, and I got a beautiful wife and beautiful kids, and I did it all, and my jet, and my yacht, and my houses, and whatever, and kids, and everything. And then, at the very end, this is what he adds. But he added, it's all worth nothing as long as I see Mordecai the Jew just sitting there at the palace gate. How many of us have said that? How many of us, we just look at our amazing life. I mean, we live in this amazing place, this amazing time, and we say, but it's all worth nothing as long as, fill in the blank. I was in Malawi, Africa a few years ago. I was driving through one of the poorest nations on earth. It's an interesting culture there. The women work, the men don't. The women carry, these giant, huge baskets of water, miles and miles, because they cook over these wood stoves, and there's nothing manufactured. We're like the only car on the road for miles. There's only one road in the country. I mean, it's so poor. There's nothing manufactured. There's no litter because they don't make things. Everything's organic, whatever. And I'm sitting, the NGO that I went with employed these two super, and this, I'm not like, both sides of the spectrum have extremists, but these two were super progressive ladies. And they are just complaining about how terrible America is the whole time. They're like, it's awful. It's such a misogynistic system. America's just the worst. And I was like, what is your problem? Like, why do you hate it? It's because of our student debt. America's unfair to women because of our student debt. And I said, what was your major? One was an English literature major. The other was a music performance major. And I was like, you don't think that your choices had something to do with your $100,000 of debt when you went to private schools? It's just the worst, the patriarchy, the this, the that. They're going off, the usual stuff. And I'm like, we're literally in one of the poorest countries on earth, emaciated people all around. I think you're the only women within 100 miles that can read. You know what I mean? Like literally. There's people, women, carrying these giant pitchers while the men, and you're just sitting there, and what are they like? They're like, hey, man. They're like, hey, man. I mean, they got these great, and they can't see. And here's the thing, like, I felt so convicted because I'm like, hey, man, in my life. And we don't say it out loud, but how many of us, we reach this place and we look out at our vast, and we're just blinded to the blessings of God, and we say, but it's all worth nothing as long as. It's all worth nothing as long as the Democrats. It's all worth nothing as long as I don't have kids. As long as my husband fills, as long as my wife, as long as my kids don't, as long as whatever, my boss, as long as the 401k, as long as the whatever, as long as my knee, it's all worth nothing. It's crazy how this takes over our minds and dominates our thoughts. What happens next is so typical. They're at this after party. They're eating midnight snacks, caviar, whatever else. And finally, his wife just pops in. So Haman's wife, Zeresh, and all his friends said, set up a sharpened pole that stands 75 feet tall. And in the morning, ask the king to impale Mordecai on it. And when this is done, you go about your merry way to the banquet with the king, as pleased Haman. So he ordered the pole set up. I mean, you reach this place where your spouse is just soliloquying on and on. It's like, are you going to do something? You ever have that guy in your life? He just talks trash all the time. And it's like, well, just throw hands. You know what I mean? Why don't you go out there and just fight him? Get the gun or get the sword or duel or whatever you got to do. Do your push-ups. Oh, look at me, whatever. And do something about it. Zeresh is like, I'm tired of this. We have good lives. Family's irritated with them. And you start making delusions of what you're going to do, Some of you know the end of the story, some of you don't. But Mordecai ends up revealing Haman's evil plot to the king through his niece, Esther. She's brilliant. She's the heroine of the story. The king gets mad, and he ends up impaling Haman on the very pole he set up to kill his enemy, which is a big irony, but it's not. Because how often do we become just like our enemies, trying to defeat our enemies, right? The same attitudes, the same things. We sink to their level trying to defeat them, and that's how wars start, isn't it? We become like the people we're trying to defeat. And, this is just the way of things. God blesses the world. People don't see it. And finally, 510 years later, God sends his son to the world to break the cycle. And he does with his actions. And before he dies for our sins, he gives this incredible, world-changing, earth-shattering statement. He says, you've heard the law that says love your neighbor and hate your enemy. Haman's heard of that law. All of us have heard that law. This is how we live. They're doing this, so we're going to hit back. It's time to fight back. And we need to stand up. We need to stop. And we're not going to tolerate and whatever. He says, but I say, if you want to break the cycle, if you want to end this, if you want to stop flipping your joy chart and hating your life and being blind, if you want to get out of this, but I say, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. He's not saying that because he wants Christians to be weak doormats. He's saying that because he loves us. He's saying that because it's the only way to break the cycle. Because he's tired of blessing humans and having us be blind to the blessings. He's tired of blessing us and having us live like Haman because we're too busy filling our own mind with hatred for our problems, hatred for our enemies, and he changed the world with us. And I think today we really need a good reminder. We live in a society, I think, right now where large evil corporations like Facebook, like Twitter, like CNN, like Fox News, like Joy Reid, like Tucker Carlson, like Wolf Blitzer, like Don Lemon, like MSNBC, they make money off our hate. They are what I call merchants of hatred. And they tell you all the things, and you just sit there, and it's, oh, they're so bad. You're right, they're bad. You're right. Oh, man, I hate them. They're evil. And that's what we do all day. We just get spun up, and they create this narrative that skews our joy charts. We have these blessed lives. We have these wonderful lives. Tens of thousands of people die every year trying to sneak into this country because they want our lives. And we sit here, and we're so mad because we have what the whole world wants. What does your joy chart look like, honestly? It blows my mind that I have this incredibly blessed. I've achieved all my goals and dreams in life. And I am like 40%, 50% negative in my mind, full of anxiety. Like, I'm safe. Things are good. It's going to be okay. And I'm like, the stock market, the government, all these things, and what's happening, education system. And I'm not saying you shouldn't stand up. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but it's like, dude, God, why am I blinding myself to your blessings in my life? God made us for more and better. The truth is, Haman and King Xerxes themselves in the world of antiquity would give anything to have our lives, the poorest of us. I love what Paul, the greatest church planter and apostle of all time, says. Romans, he restates Jesus' seminal teaching. And he puts it this way. He says, look, guys, you can't conform to the patterns of this world. You have to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And here's what he's saying. Look, the Twitter, the Fox News, the CNN, the Ben Shapiro's, all the patterns of this world, they're so negative. They're so negative. And that's just what everybody does. Your enemies are bad and you're good, and your enemies are bad and you're good, and they're bad and you're good and they're bad. And what do? Just blinds us to the blessing of God in our life. All we can see is the hurt. All we can see is the anger. All we can see is and Paul says, you have to renew your minds. If you want to break out of this, you have to renew your minds. And the big question is how? How do we do this? And what I'm about to do is give you 3 steps. It's the most practical part of the series. This is it. You need to write these down. I know a lot of you aren't, especially you guys. You guys never take notes. You're going to ask your wife, what was the thing? You're going to think you're going to memorize it, but then you're going to forget. You're going to be like, honey, I need those 3 questions. Did you write those down for me? Just humor me. Write it down. Do something, please. But these 3 questions are my keys from the Bible to having peace of mind and to loving my life instead of hating it. And I am an anxiety-filled person who struggles heavily with seasonal issues. And these 3 questions have been a lifeline to me. These questions, rooted in the story that we just read, are as follows. First question I always ask myself, when my joy chart is skewed, I always say, what do I win and what does it cost if I play this game? What do I win and what is it? This is such a clarifying question. This is such a helpful, this is the most clarifying question. Think about it. If Haman would have asked this question, he would have never cared about Morty. What do I win if I fight Morty? Well, nothing. Nothing. It doesn't matter. He's a nobody. He's a peon. What does it cost me? Giant labor shortage, the guilt of committing genocide, and it cost me my life savings. Why would you ever do that? That's dumb. That's a costly thing. And you think about the games you play. You know what I mean? In traffic, you brake check a guy. What do you win? I don't know anybody who's like, you know what? I just got brake checked and my anger's gone. I just felt convicted of driving poorly. You know what I mean? Because he braked, I've never brake checked anyone and been like, you know what? I just feel so much better. My anger's gone. I did that and we saw each other and it was like, hey, you know what? You're a good guy. Fist, but thanks for that reminder that I need to drive better. You know what I mean? Like, you don't win anything. You win zero. You win a cat poop sandwich when you brake check somebody. And what does it cost you? Your dignity, the respect of your wife, the respect of your kids, as they're like, come on, Dad, really? Like, what's wrong with you? You know, it might cost you your life. It might cost you a ticket. Ladies, what do you win in hating that girl who's dating your ex? You hate him, by the way. Like, that's why you're not dating him anymore. You know what I mean? What do you win? You win nothing. What does it cost you? Your time? As you scroll on their social media saying, oh, look how ugly she is. Look how vain she is. Look at that thing she wears. She's just putting it all out there like, blah, blah, I'm so much prettier than she is. It's like, why? What does it cost you? This doesn't feel good. It's not like, you know what? In hating my ex, I just really feel like a much happier person. No. What do I win? Nothing. What does it cost me? My joy, don't play that game. How about this one? This is really personal for me this last week. In worrying about the political situations in the world. You know what? I'm really glad that I spent 3 additional hours after I gained a full comprehensive understanding of the situation in Ukraine, really just reading the same things that already confirm my opinions. You know what? I think Vladimir Putin is just going to turn that train around. He's just going to take all his stuff and he's going to leave Ukraine because I spent 4 hours of my life that I can never get back rereading everything I already knew. That was a good investment of my time. And you know what? I think Hunter Biden and Burisma and the questions I have and the uncertainty, reading more and getting more confused really helped me. That was a really good investment. No! What do I win? Misery. What does it cost me? My joy. And this all breeds a second question, right? What do I win? What does it cost me if I play this game? Second question, once you've evaluated this, you ask yourself, do I really want to play this game? Do I really want to play this game? This is an excellent question to ask. You ever heard the phrase, play stupid games, win stupid prizes? I think there's a lot of us, we just play stupid games. Haman should have never played Morty's game. That was a stupid game, and he won a stupid prize. He got impaled on the pole. It was pretty. Mordecai's a peon. Why does he care about Morty? He's nothing. He's a nobody. What percent of your fights with your spouse are dumb fights? I would say in my marriage, 100% of my fights with my spouse, I don't even know what we fight about. What are we fighting about? Me being cranky. Like, that's kind of like, just realize that I am just a work in progress for my whole life, to quote Bill Burr. You know what I mean? She is complete, but I am continually a work in progress. But anyway, traffic, for real. Why do I play this game? The news. And I'm not saying don't be informed. I'm not saying don't take a stand. Like, look, you do it. But after you gain a comprehensive understanding and you're just back and going around in circles for the same things, it's time to stop. And what are the dumb prizes we win? Our joy chart getting flipped. We have a really mostly good life, but we hate our lives. What are the prizes we win? In some circumstances, in marriages, we win a divorce. Why? Because we fought over petty things. It didn't matter. Why do we play that game? What are the prizes we win? Anger at a country that is the greatest country in human history. American hegemony has ushered in the greatest era of peace and prosperity the world's ever known. American hegemony has lifted billions of people out of poverty and gone farther than any other movement in world history at ending slavery. You know what? We're so angry at this country. It's like, so many people die every year trying to live here. The question I always ask is, do I really want to play this game? And if the answer is no, then you have to make this new statement. Okay? If the answer is, I don't want to play this game, this is what I always do. This helps me so much. This next statement, critical. I always say, Jesus, I trust you with that fill in the blank. I trust you with that situation. I trust you with that politician. I trust you with that situation. I trust you with that family member. I trust you with this thing. Sometimes I got to repeat this over and over again in my mind because I keep going back. But I'm no longer going down that road. I'm putting a door in my mind. I'm shutting it. Not walking down there anymore because I refuse to blind myself to the incredible blessings of God that He has given to me. When I'm deeply loved and highly favored by the God of the universe, I'm not going to sit here and feel like a victim. Jesus, I trust you with that driver. It's a big one for me. You'd be amazed what staying in the right lane and driving the speed limit have done for me. You know what I mean? It's just like, wow. I didn't need that 30 seconds that I would have gotten by getting to, Hebron a little bit sooner and passing 3 garbage trucks on my way up there. Like, why? You know what I mean? My truck doesn't even have oil pressure. Like, why am I ruining it? It's just, sometimes you have to play that game. Sometimes you do have to play this game. Like, there's a game and it's stupid, but you have to play it because of situations in your life. And this is the third question, right? So there's some games that you can choose not to play. There's some games you have to play because a family member, because of whatever, because a boss at work forces you to play a game. What do you do then? And this is the third question. This is the most powerful question. This question has changed my life, and I think it can change yours. Big question here. What story do I want to tell 20 years from now? Years ago, right after I started pastoring this church, 7 years ago, 7.5, a local HVAC company sabotaged our heater. And I caught them red-handed, three-phase heat. They came in, they rewired it so it blew backwards. They said it was the motherboard, and you got to pay us $1,400 and whatever right now. And it was the middle of the winter. I was scared. And I just, when I busted them, when I realized what they had done, red-handed, I want to call the police. These guys committed a crime against my family. I wanted to put them out of business. I wanted to take them to court. I wanted to humiliate them in the town square of DeMont Wheatfield, unofficial and original, or Hebron Chatter. I wanted to let them have it. Current situation in my life at that time, I had the best wife ever, still do. I lived in a house, beautiful house that had a gas fireplace that could heat the whole house, secondary heating zone with another furnace that could heat the whole house. So it wasn't really as big a problem as I felt like it was. At the age of 29, I had achieved all of my life's dreams, like literally everything that I'd set out to do, I'd done. My joy chart should have been maxed out. You know what I mean? Like, what is this problem? It's a 1% problem. It's not even that big a problem. My joy chart was like 100% negative in that moment. I thought about telling everybody how bad their company was. I was so mad. They came into my house and did that to me. And then I realized that's not the story I want to tell my kids and grandkids 20 years from now. That's not the story that I want to tell. So I called the owner. I showed him the evidence, and I said, hey, I don't believe your employee did this. I don't believe that you did this. I don't believe you knew about it. And I want to make it right. And he apologized, and he agreed to pay for the bill that a company I hired. I said, hey, obviously we're not going to do business together, but, whatever. And I just forgave him, and we're good. Because when you got a dumb game in your life that you have to play, when you're thinking about how to respond to an enemy who has wronged you, when you're thinking about canceling somebody, I don't want you to think about the story you want to tell today, because the story we want to tell, they're the worst and I'm the best. But what is the story you want to tell your kids and grandkids? What is the legacy you want to leave? What is the story you want told about you in eternity? What is the story you want told about you in your funeral? I thought, what do I want my legacy to be? Because here's the deal. I didn't want my legacy. I had two options, right? My legacy could have been, Pastor John came here from Minnesota, and that guy didn't let anybody mess him over. He was tough as nails. That guy, people came into him, and he let them have it. He was nobody took advantage of him, and he put that HVAC company out of business. That's what Pastor John did. Or my legacy could be, Pastor John was a man who had love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. He was a man who loved his enemies and prayed for those who persecuted him. He was a man who showed me what it meant to forgive people. And I thought about those two stories in that moment, and I said, I want that second one. That's the one I want 20 years from now. That's what I want my legacy to be. And it changed the way I acted in that moment. What story do you want to tell about your life? About how you acted right now? We're in the middle of what feels like just an endless conga line of crises, and I just think, I want my kids to look at their dad and say he was a man of faith and confidence, that God would prevail. I want my kids to look at their father and say he was a man who was steadfast and resilient, always confident that the best was yet to come because of the work of Jesus Christ in his life. That was my dad. I want this church to look at their pastor and say, John was a man of optimism and hope who put aside his sinful nature and stood on the promises of God in all things at all times. That's what I want my legacy to be, and that's what I want your legacy to be, because it's God's best for you. What is the story you want told 20 years from now? What is the story you want told in eternity? Something doesn't come from nothing, guys. And I don't want our story to be, I had the grace of Jesus in my life like a lot because all I did was sin. And it's good. Jesus paid for it. And I was just negative and angry, and now I'm here in heaven. Thank God. That's not. I want treasure in heaven. I want us to live a life that honors God's plan. We're writing our stories. What's the story that you're writing? Jesus' words, I want to read them to you one last time as we get ready to leave the series. And these words are so profound, and I don't want you to just blah, blah, blah. I want these words to pierce our hearts together. He says, you have heard the law that says, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say, but the Son of God says, but the man who conquered death itself says, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. And then he hung on the cross, and he looked at the soldiers, and he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I want that to be us. These are not some silly words of self-sabotage. These are the most wisdom-filled, blessing-filled words in human history. As we get ready to close, I want to ask you to stand to your feet. Look, these are not dumb words designed to sabotage your life. These words change the world, and they can change your life today. And I don't want this series to be like, well, it was interesting. I want this to change the course of your life because of the power of God. I want us to once again be the people that change the world from a place of barbarity to a place of second chances. And today, all of us have things that we're worried about. You know, on a global level, on a local level, I mean, we got a government that seems to be trying to make the wrong choices at every juncture. Lots of craziness outside and inside our homes. But I want to remind you of something, and I want you to hear this real loud and clear. God keeps his promises. He wrote the end of the story, and we don't have anything to fear in Christ Jesus. That's the story I want to write. That's the legacy I want to leave for my children and their children. That's the legacy I want you to write. I want the people of First Church to be a fountain of life, a beacon of hope, because God still reigns and he wins. What is the story that you want to tell? What is the story that you're telling? Maybe it's time for us to make a switch and to say, God, I trust you with all of it, all of it. Hold on, guys, hold on. I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready. It's too much, too much. Mikey, Hebron, hold on. Too early. We're getting excited. Getting excited. Sometimes I just get ahead of myself. You know, I had 4 shots of espresso today, but guys, Jesus' words are so profound, right? And Paul restates it in the book of Romans. He says, do not be conformed to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, right? He makes that statement. He's restating what Jesus gave to us. But then in Romans 12, he concludes, speaking to us as we try to love our enemies, he concludes with this powerful statement that kind of sums the whole thing up. And these words just like jumped out of the Word of God and into my heart this week, and I think they might pierce your heart. And I think this is something that's worth memorizing. And I think this is a really great capstone to this whole series. And I want you to get this, and I just think it's so important because these aren't just my words. These are I think God's inspired word to us, a message 2,000 years ago to our church today. I want you to hear this. This is the story I want to tell. He says, this is so good. He says, don't let evil conquer you, but conquer evil by doing good. That's the story I want to tell. That's who we are in Christ Jesus. That's what I want this church to be, generation to generation. A place of second chances, a place of hope, a place that forgives, a place that loves our enemies and prays for those who persecute us. Let's build a legacy and let's tell a story of hope. Don't let evil conquer you, but in the name of Jesus, conquer evil by doing what is good. And pray with me. God, I lift up our churches and all of our locations. May we be people who love you and love all the people of the earth. May we be loving, compassionate, hope-filled people who love our enemies, who pray for those who persecute you, and who conquer evil by doing good. In the name of Jesus, we pray. All God's people said, amen and amen.